Find you somebody who loves you like this front office loves Jake Cave. So yesterday was the deadline to add players to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, adding them to the 40-man roster. Jake Cave is still on the roster. Jake Cave survives. You see here, Devin Smeltzer, Kyle Garlick were both outrighted, and Charlie Barnes and Willians Astudillo were both designated. Not really surprised by any of those, but kind of figured that Jake Cave had a great chance of being a kind of casualty of this situation as well. Instead, he and the Twins have agreed to a contract next year. He was arbitration eligible, and it's actually his projected arbitration salary was over $1 million. They've agreed to under $1 million, and this is not guaranteed at this point. So kind of as you can see here, this is Dustin Morse sharing the news of the day, and he notes that the roster is at 40. That doesn't mean the Twins aren't going to make any moves. So Jake Cave, I am weirded out that he's still on the roster, to be honest. We'll take a look into him in just a sec, but just because he's on now doesn't mean that he's going to continue to make it through. So we'll see. But real quick, we are going to talk about a little bit about Blayne Enlow, and then I want to take a look into Chris Vallimont. But the other four guys I think were slam dunks to get added: Royce Lewis, Jose Miranda, Cole Sands, and Josh Winder. All four of those guys would have definitely been taken in the Rule 5 draft had you unprotected them. So they were very obvious. The other two weren't so obvious to me. But again, let's talk about Jake Cave real quick first here. He's a guy who looked pretty good earlier in his career and has been just awful the last 2 years. I've got his numbers up here from Baseball Reference. He just gives away a lot of plate appearances. Even when things were going well, he was giving away a ton of plate appearances. In 2018, 102 strikeouts and just 18 walks. He's been getting that ratio better and better kind of as he's gone along here. But still, not a guy that you're going to trust to put together a lot of good plate appearances. Jake Cave, he can make some plays out in the outfield, no doubt about it, but he's kind of has that Eddie Rosario flaw of he thinks he can make a lot more plays than he can actually make. So, you see him diving at a lot of balls he has no business diving at. And, maybe more than anything, it's been 800 plate appearances. He's 29? The Twins have to be able to find some guys with either some more upside or they're looking to get a shot. And it's kind of a shame that Alberto Celestino didn't get a chance to take advantage of that opportunity he had last year. Had almost no experience above Double-A, so that was a tough assignment for him to come up to the bigs, but it would have been nice to see him kind of take off and show us some things. I don't think Jake Cave would be on the roster had that happened. But even if we're going to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt and take a look at his career numbers, it's only a 95 OPS plus. He's got a barely over 300 on base percentage. If you're looking for explanations as to why he's still around, I don't know. But again, this doesn't mean he's going to make it to opening day. Who knows? Back to the prospects who were added to the 40-man roster. Blayne Enlow, he was a guy, in my preview, I talked about him and how he's recovering from Tommy John. So it'd be pretty easy for the Twins to add him to the 40-man roster. And then in March, once spring training starts, they can put him on the 60-day injured list, and he is not count against the 40-man numbers. With the lockout coming, it's going to come. I'm expecting it'll be fine. Spring training will start as normal. We'll see. But with that coming, there's going to be a transactions freeze. So I expect there's going to be more transactions happening in March anyway. So really having Enlow on the counting against the 40-man from now until March, I don't think is going to be as big of a deal as it would in other years. As you can see here, he only made 3 starts last year for Cedar Rapids, but he was pretty impressive, and he was throwing like 96, 97. That combined with missing all of 2020, obviously from the eliminated season due to COVID within the minor leagues, a guy who hasn't pitched a lot and will not pitch a lot next year either. So it's kind of a bummer situation, but I'm relieved that he's not being. I don't know that he would have been drafted in the Rule 5 draft, but I'm relieved that he's staying. This franchise needs pitching, and transitioning to talk about Chris Vallimont, he's a guy I wouldn't have added to the 40-man roster, but given this organization's such a need for pitching, I get it. And let's take a look into him. So switching gears here, we're at Fangraphs, and I've got the minor league stats pulled up here. These are the pitching stats. Let me flip that over. Minimum 90 innings pitched in the upper levels. So these are AAA, AA guys. And as you can see here, that gives us a sample of 128 pitchers. And I have this up because I'm going to show you that Chris Vallimont is one of the most extreme pitchers from last year in the high minors. He had literally the highest K per nine among all these guys who had 90 innings pitched. Now, since he walked 6.3 guys per nine, that's got to be one of the highest. Yeah, fourth highest. So just the most extreme. The K percentage is super high. It's not as impressive as the K per nine in part because of the walks, but he's still top 10 in K percentage and walk percentage. That 14.6, top 5, just absolutely ridiculous. And it keeps going. Batting average on balls in play. Chris Vallimont, third in all of the high minors. AAA and AA of guys who threw at least 90 innings last year. Again, a sample of 128 pitchers. So it does make it a little hard to kind of figure out what to make out of Chris Vallimont. You see there he had the 15th highest ERA, a 6.03 ERA. But, some of the other metrics, his FIP, his XFIP, due to that BABIP, don't look quite as bad. Let's do that again. I mean, that's ridiculous. 362. So, yeah, but, at a certain point, you are what your performance is. Obviously, the walks kill him. That's got to change no matter what. But certainly, this is a guy, since he is really good at missing bats, I'm very intrigued at Vallimont as a potential bullpen option in the major leagues potentially next year. Now, I'm not so sure I would start him out on the year on that track. Maybe you let him start the year as a starting pitcher. Give him one more chance to show you what he's got in April. And, if he kind of continues this kind of a performance and you say, all right, man, you're on the 40-man now, that means we have to prioritize your value to the big club over your individual progress. So we're putting you in the bullpen. We think that's where you're going to be as a major leaguer, and we'll go from there. Some guys really embrace that change. Some guys, it's a little more difficult. But either way, this is a pretty great outcome for Chris Vallimont. Once you're on the 40-man roster, there are so few barriers for you to be contributing to the major league club. And with how many injuries that teams have had lately, sometimes they, like I mentioned with Celestino, sometimes it's just like, okay, we need a guy. This is literally the last healthy guy that we have on the 40-man roster, and we don't want to take somebody off and expose him to waivers. So this guy is not ready, but we're going to put him in there and see what happens. And that's what could happen with Chris Vallimont now that he's on the roster. So interesting that they added him. I wouldn't have guessed that they would have added 6 guys. I'm not really sure what that means. Maybe there's a bit more of a makeover coming than I would have anticipated. Obviously there's been some trade talk with Byron Buxton and other guys. We'll see, because, they're definitely going to be, this won't be the 40-man roster, come March or come opening day or whatever you want to say. But again, there is the activity of the day. Jake Cave, that was an $800,000 contract they agreed to. Again, who knows? I don't know if he'll make it through the offseason or not. He shouldn't. It was my opinion.